Good morning, noon, evening or night, depending when you're watching this video, and welcome to 2021. Finally, 2020 is over, and my god, no moment too soon, because this year wasn't the greatest for most of us. Thinking 2019 was bad, 2020 be like, hold my beer. However, with that year past, it's finally that time of year again to share with you a general update video, looking at the past year, the present today and the future year for both World of Tanks, my personal life and this YouTube channel. So we have a lot to talk about, so without further ado, let's just jump right into the meat and potatoes that Wargaming gave us this year. So for the second time, Wargaming has published an article giving us a preview of the follow-up year, in this case a fresh preview of 2020. So like previous time, I will go through the points of this announcement and consider every bit of content in my personal honest opinion, going through past towards failed or maybe even not done, which has happened before multiple times. So let's just have a look at the first bit of content. And that was the 10th anniversary of World of Tanks. And for me this one is neutral. So this year marked the 10th anniversary that World of Tanks exists. So in celebration, Wargaming organized several stages, each of which containing a certain milestone. So this should be grand, with the best rewards and exciting elements, but well, it was kind of tame, to be honest. I even had to look up what, it all contained, so it wasn't really that memorable. With general chat, honking, storm tigers and a team clash without teams being the most prominent elements throughout this big event. And what were those greatest of the greatest reward for all? Every free low tier given throughout the years if you weren't online during the summer, and a kind of shit tier 6 light. Only one unique 3D skin for the T30, which was the main prize, which you could earn with those anniversary coins. Although it surpassed somewhat last year's Tank Festival, I had way high expectations for it. Maximum tier 6 as a reward, even the yearly well-deserved reward goes a tier higher. So yeah, it was something, but no, not that much or that grand as was anticipated, especially after the Great Tank Fest in 2019. And even before that, there was even a better event like Christmas 2017 with a entire new Swedish nation you could get almost for free, meaning that it was something over a longer period of time. It still is kind of neutral. Crew 2.0, not done, although they have spoken about Crew 2.0 just a few weeks ago, but they didn't implement it this year, so it's not done. And well, I don't really understand why this hasn't been done yet. I mean, you have already a great example you can get from World of Warships, even if Wargaming is again coming with the stupid argument of that some players invest a lot of time and gold in the current crew. You can still compensate to research all new skills, like World of Warships did. And do not even dare introducing a demount skill kit that you can only get a handful of. Otherwise, it is credits down the drain for anything else, just like you did with the equipment rework. Oh, speaking of which, equipment rework or equipment 2.0 semi-failed. So while equipment was a bit more complicated to change, they still did it before crew and even somewhat failed in it. The only credit I can give is that there's somewhat more variation in choices, at least in between tank types instead of the Fantastic Four, the coated optics, fence, vertical stabilizers and gun rammer, always being used on every tank. But it all goes downhill from there. Even with the new equipment pieces, those 4 are still in there and are still very popular. The bonus slot given from tier 6 and higher are, well, a nice addition, but it makes Fence even better everywhere than before, because Fence gets a bonus on every single type, for survivability, maneuverability, firepower, you call it. You also have new equipments which have no place at this game. And I'm looking at you, improved Commander's Vision. I mean, why introducing equipment that reducing scammo of tanks inside bushes? I mean, bushes as they are right now are still quite tricky to use sometimes and downright inconsistent other times. That in combination with this huge dispersion of view ranges between the tanks makes these types of equipment not necessary at all. But hey, it buffs the EBR, so it must be fine. And there's also this ridiculous exchange rate you get to reinstall all your equipment pieces. I mean, oh my god, if you have like 300 tanks in your garage, nearly 750 equipment pieces. And Wargaming be like, best I can do is 33 demount kits. Pay us if you want more. I mean, go to hell with that. It's so fucking stupid and another spit in the faces of free-to-play players. But that's not even the worst. I mean, worst of all, Camo net, repair kit and binoculars are no longer demounted for free, so every free-to-play player can fuck himself once again even harder. That's the Wargaming guarantee. I actually want to come back to my verdict and give this change a full-on failed instead of a semi-failed, just because there's so much wrong that happened with this new equipment. I mean, I have some clan members who are reluctant to implement this new equipment because they are honestly believing that it's so bad as it is right now that they must change it again somewhere in the future, but they don't know how wargaming works. And finally, to my personal salt on the injury, a very good part to the new equipment got mentioned in somewhere in some developer diaries, namely the equipment manager, in which you can set up multiple builds for the same tanks in different situations. For example, you can have a build for random battle and build for clan battle, or just a full-on survivability build, a firepower build, mobility build. I am really a fan of that, and well, you can earn, as Wargaming can earn extra because of that, if people want to have different builds, and so they have to get more types of equipment. But they did nothing with that. So yeah, I consider that a personal middle finger directed at me. So definitely a full-on failed on equipment rework. Next up, New Balanced, which has passed. So this one contains multiple parts, so let's take a look over them one by one. So first, the HP improvements of low tier tanks is great, absolutely amazing. So luckily, not all hope in Wargaming servers for new players or free-to-play players has been lost. This actually made low-tier tanks a lot more interesting. Also, extra bonus points for making the HP buffs lower and lower the higher the tiers got. So you have a near perfect flow from tier 6 to tier 7 where the buff stops. So there's nothing wrong here and nothing negative to say about this change. A rework for all shell types and related changes to the durability of all vehicles. This was in combination with the HP buff, however that's kind of weird though, because that would degrade the general HP buff somewhat, because every AP round gets higher damage. However, they didn't do it, still not wanting to reduce the damage of their premium shells. I'm not calling it special rounds as long as it is pay to win. It's quite funny how Wargaming announced these changes to premium shells around 2 years ago. So yeah, they're definitely trying to make this game less pay to win. 2 years. Oh my god. Number 3. Changes to the mechanics of HE shells, heavily reducing the alpha damage, yet they said that HE should always deal more damage than regular rounds if it bans. Again, this is a weird one, but thank god it wasn't implemented. That would mean goodbye to 1750 alpha damage on 183 millimeters and hello 480 damage. And last, rebalancing of the SPGs and their shells. Like I said a year ago, the difference between HE was so little that the standard with the stun was still the most wanted shell type. Only AP made shotgunning once again a funny possibility. However, with only the first point, the HP buff, being actually implemented and the others aren't being fully implemented, it's hard to decide what makes this not done. However, since the point 2 and 3 are quite ridiculous and 4 being, well, not that huge or not that much of a game changer, I'll give this one a pass, since the HP buffs was definitely a very good implementation. Frontline and Steel Hunter. Past. I changed my mind almost completely about Frontline. It's boring after a while, that's for sure, but the credit gain is so good. Being only 1 week each month for 4 months wasn't also that bad. Also, knowing some tricks to get a easy general did also help. But please get some more balanced maps for the future. Steel Hunter was again amusing and fun to play. Even with one map I could tolerate it just about, but luckily there was a new map introduced. One that makes quite a reappearance in another special game mode. But more on that later. Also, more different tanks in Steel Hunter made it more than enough variety to be enjoyable throughout the 4 stages. The tier 9 reward tanks were also quite good. 3 of them I have the Sharp Future 4. I really like the unique gun with its, well, long intra-clip reload, but, well, high potential burst damage. Only the Object 777 was somewhat butchered from its first mention several years ago. Now it's just a typical Soviet heavy, but somewhat worse than the others. But with all the other rewards on the different levels, you could get 15 levels per stage. It made it quite profitable. So pretty great job this year on these game modes. So keep that up for the following years. Stream Wars. Past. What eventually became Team Clash was amazing to play, a team battle 7v7 format in which you played in a general team of a streamer. You could eventually win that streamer you chose for as a commander. Please do this more in the future with different streamers. These community events are amazing and still a really strong point in this game. The PvE event. Past. So both the Berlin event and Munich 13 Halloween event were quite amazing and also a great way to introduce a new map and tell an interesting backstory or lore. However, Munich 13 got kind of killed by something similar like fuel. You can only play a few games until you're out of this fuel, or in this case, commanders of the tanks need to recover for a long period of time, unless you buy more. But in the end it wasn't that huge of a problem since I wasn't playing the Halloween event that much. But I really want these things more to be like Berlin, where you only got held back by a bigger grind to get all the rewards. The Battle Pass failed. So what did I say 1 year ago? Oh yeah. Good addition for long-term rewards, so players keep on playing, but don't make it anything which includes paying gold or money. So yeah, the improved battle pass, really, but wargaming wouldn't be wargaming if they also keep an additional and better bond equipments behind that paywall. New vehicles. Past. The Russian double-barrel tanks were surprisingly well balanced. Nothing in the sense of being too overpowered or being bad, just being, well, quite good, but not too overpowered. Good job right there. The Polish mediums, also well balanced with a new unique engine mechanic. Only a little bit sad that's only available on the tier 10, but again no words of being too strong or too weak. Keep that up. And the Italian heavy auto reloaders, which hasn't come out yet. Only the premium tier 8 tank. Behind loot boxes, with 0 weak spots on the turret. Oh my god, Wargaming, you were doing it so well! Sure, the premium variants of the double barreled and the Polish mediums are also better than the Tech 3 counterparts. Unfortunately, a trend we all have to accept right now. But the Bisonte is seemingly a chieftain on tier 8. Still, well, 2 out of 3 correct makes you just pass this particular bit of new content. New maps, passed. I don't have too much issues with Pearl River and Berlin. I consider Pearl River to be a very good map with nicely divided flanks, which you can still fire somewhat at, but also have enough cover from the different flanks. I only have trouble with Berlin in the upper part of the city, where you can push the enemy team very easily if you have just the slightest more amount of tanks or the amount of guts to make the push. Also with the bridge on the north being inconsistently occupied, it's just a toss of the coin which team is going to win hard and which one doesn't. You just don't know when you are safe from a flanking maneuver from the north. But the south seems to be very well balanced. I love to use that bunker if there is artillery, so in general a okay map. So that's all the bits of content that Wargaming has promised us this year. So a year ago I concluded with these new implementations that the gameplay quality would not improve, but at least the user quality will. Which, well, kind of happened. The only thing that I really felt contradicting this point was the fact that you cannot look at specific statistics of your modules, which were also displayed at the downside of your garage UI. So I needed to go towards the tank in the tech tree to search for the fire chance in the engine, for example, because that isn't being showed in the garage itself, and the statistics that are at the right side of the garage if you click on a particular tank of yours. But furthermore, better UI overview, I guess. I didn't really notice it that much like the graphic change in 1.0. However, more strong premium tanks and more improved equipment and reward tanks that are being earned. But once again, no huge drama alerts, luckily. But that doesn't mean that I would put my guard down on those ridiculous loot boxes mechanics, the bonds that are now being paid for premium days, and the never-ending unedited RNG factors on shells, accuracy, and especially penetration. Moving on towards my life in 2020. So I thought that 2019 was already bad, pretty much the worst year I ever had. Oh boy, how wrong I was. How deeply wrong was I? I could say that 2020 has been the worst year of my life so far. But let's just start with something positive, because I got my bachelor's degree of science and I have now the title of engineer in the field of spatial development. So I started looking for jobs in November 2019, but only in late February 2020 did one company fully promised me a position. Although it wasn't really the job I was looking for, a bit more in the direction of traffic than urban engineering, which I had more preference to, but the development I could make within that job sounded very interesting, still having some elements of that urban engineering within it. But then 1 month later, well, eventually we need to talk about that huge infectious elephant in the room. COVID-19 struck the world. However, Instead of the 2 to 4 weeks of being in lockdown, which was pretty much promised, well, the government would more look in detail how bad this virus actually was and, well, maybe also look to ways to deal with it and create a scenario with the least amount of negative consequences for the population. But they could also have dealt with it a bit better before it even came here. Well, at least some political parties in the Netherlands were already warning to be careful with this virus in late January that year, almost a full month before it was coming towards Europe. However, the government, alongside with the whole fucking world, decided to jump on the bandwagon and call this virus the worst virus to ever struck humanity, which is comparable to all past pandemics combined. Okay, that's a little bit over-exaggerated, but they also over-exaggerate. Sure, locking a country down for a few weeks to look more into this new kind of virus. Okay, but when it turns out that the amount of severe cases and deaths were less than the common influenza flu, which is pretty much the common cold, then I don't understand why we need to have a new social normal with a permanent 1.5 meter society, masks and lockdowns every time 100 or more people get infected compared to the week before. Just the sheer amount of bullshit really with these measurements it's insane. But even more insane is how many people are backing this up. Well, I can probably fill up a whole video with all the questionable elements of how the governments are dealing with this pandemic, which you can't even criticize, by the way, because then you would be automatically a conspiracy nuthead or a radical right terrorist. Well, that's just so easy. Name calling. Well, totally not 1984 stuff or something, no. But all that I want to say for now is that the cure in which is being done right now in the form of those lockdowns and measurements is far worse than the actual illness itself or the actual virus itself. So why am I so furious with a passion about this? Well, it cost me my fucking job. I would have started on the 1st of April, no joke, but well, in the end it was an actual joke. But for an entire month I was kept on a leash, not allowed to start because the government doesn't want to earn money, only expand it. Sounds a bit like wargaming if you think about it. But at the end of the month they said with the current measurements we cannot allow you to start because you need to be at the office to get used to how the job works. So I was fired without even starting with working. So yeah, I am full on jobless. Also, my mother had another setback with her health again. Now, the medicine that she was given last year was causing trouble with her heart rhythm. Because of that, she had to go to the hospital multiple times again, which was made extra difficult because she was assigned to 2 different hospitals, one for her heart and the other one for her lungs, making the whole process of analysis and recovery way longer than it should be. And this year my grandma died of cancer. This was extra painful because for half a year I went with her to her appointments at the hospital. Think about it, I went quite a lot to the hospital this year because she had a tumor the size of a potato between her lungs and esophagus. Luckily she reacted well to the chemotherapy and would seemingly recover, but in the end that was too good to be true because the cancer was already spread throughout her whole body, so she decided herself to end it all by euthanasia. This would mark the first time somebody this close to me has died and also the first time someone picked their choice themselves to die. It really was weird and I was even allowed to to be there when it happened, but I decided not to do that and gave her a farewell a few days before, which in itself was already hard enough. All of that made this year pretty much the shittiest one ever, even though there were at the end some positives this year. I was actually quite grateful not to be employed after all, because that way I could spend more time with my grandma on her trips to the hospital. My mother eventually also recovered a fair bit once again and is also luckily home again. Through this year I also did some fun personal projects to keep myself entertained, some of which you can see right here on YouTube, some for the MBTT clan here in World of Tanks, and some for my friends in real life. I also met up a lot with my friends for, well, the time it was still allowed, because I really missed those interactions a lot, which I was not expecting. Being more introverted, I thought that I could miss it for a while, but nope. I'm more social than I thought. And after waiting patiently, I was allowed to eventually work at the company where I should start in April. So in the end, I still got a full-time job this year. So this year could have gone even worse than it was, but even with some positives, it just wasn't a good year. Hopefully the next year is just going to be better, but well, that's having a very low standard for 2021. But I also thought the same about 2019 last year, so I'm just going to stop it right here and before I jinx anything, and just hope that 2021 is not going to get worse. Then coming up my YouTube channel in 2020. So with the extra free time on hand and a lot of catalog, I actually managed to upload 2 videos every week this entire year. Even more in general if you count the daily videos for 2 weeks at the start of the first lockdown. I eventually got a new computer which gave me way better video quality, got some extra special videos out for the MBTT clan, and started to give some commentary at several replay series. So this year was, well, quite great for my YouTube channel and its content. Although I have to admit that since getting my full-time job in October, the last few months has made it more of a chore than a hobby, trying to keep up the 2 video upload each week. So from past to present, how are things right now? So what are my general thoughts about World of Tanks right now? So right now I am investing less time in World of Tanks than before, with just one major rage quit, which wasn't really that dramatic this year. So that's quite an improvement. I'm not having the mentality anymore to play each day, which I find a lot better to do. Only during these festive events I spend a bit more time in World of Tanks, but that would definitely go down later on. So my life right now. So last year I talked about neutral expectations, and those really helped me getting through this year, especially regarding my grandmother. I'm just really living day to day, not thinking too positively or negatively about the future, although I do have a lot of thoughts behind the whole COVID measurements, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Thinking that's going to get worse unless the right movements are getting the seats of power in the government. Although I start to care less about what is going to happen and just, well, see it out, only hoping the right outcome will eventually become reality. And YouTube right now, so because of the last few months YouTube becoming a chore, I'm a bit worn out of content creation, but I do still have some ideas right now that I want to make into videos. And from present to future, looking at World of Tanks in 2021. So Wargaming didn't publish any articles containing goals and promises for 2021. So the best thing I got here is the stream of the year 2020, which contained the Q&A with developers, which is compiled in a digestible article from the dailybounce.net. Even though nowhere in this article is confirmed that these points are going to be achieved in 2021, it looks very like what Wargaming would have published in a What's Coming in 2021 article. So let's review it. The HE Balance 2.0. Still, I do not think that HEs should be rebalanced. The only tanks with problematic HE were the Type 4 and Type 5 Heavy back in the day, but well, once again, it was more because of their combination with their guns and their ridiculous armor, but that got rebalanced. Furthermore, only artillery HE is well kind of irritating, but we will come back in that in a moment. With that being said, I find this change very interesting though. They want HE to be more predictable. More armor equals less damage. Although we already see it, but from time to time something weird happens where you deal more damage to a heavy tank frontally than to a medium tank on the side or on the rear. So a good chance to get rid of the spam HE anywhere to deal damage. The only downside is that spaced armor tanks will also be buffed regarding HE absorption, making the Super Conqueror and the new Bisonte tank even stronger. But in the end it's, well, a relatively small negative to pay out for a great positive. In the end, I think it's worth the trade. SPG Rebalance 2.0. This one is very similar to what the idea was this year in the new balance regarding the shell types. Only change is that the first type of HE, the regular HE, will have the largest splash damage with stun, and the second premium or special HE type will have smaller splash with bigger damage. Again, it really depends on what the difference is between the damage, what would make the second type admirable enough to use. Also, the shells will have different trajectories, making more interesting tactical decisions possible. However, the second type is only slower than the first, making the damage even more important for it to be admirable enough once again. And AP will be full on shotgun modus because the shell arc is quite low. But there is even more, such as reduced reload if you are reloaded but you wanna change the shell type. An SPG 6th Sense that gives the target a heads up if an SPG fires at it. A siege mode for SPGs, but they can only fire within the siege mode and not within mobility mode. Tracers will return, so counter batterying will be easier again. Splash zone indicators for SPGs to see which targets are in it. And finally, minimap indicators of the general location of a SPG when its shot hits. So it seems that they want to smarten the arty playstyle up with different choices giving both advantages and drawbacks. With all of this, SPGs will take more time in order to line up a shot correctly and also give targets more info when they are focused and where their Tormentor is located. They have to be more intelligent about the ammo choice and always have to relocate now because the minimap indicator and the tracer threats. Meaning it's quite a nerf for artillery, but more in a smarter way, which is great. Also, the bonus of the splash zone indicator is good, because that way those focusing bastards will realize that they cannot damage me when I'm behind a fucking building! Crew System 2.0. It seems like the whole of World of Tanks is going to be 2.0 with all these 2.0 changes. Even though it didn't happen this year, I can now somewhat understand why, because it has a 75 level system, which have to be proper balanced alongside with the 35 different skills in total. It seems great with a lot of elements which are giving me a lot of joy if they are implemented, like Sixth Sense that will become a default skill, that there only be one crew member each tank, so no more weird extra crew in your premiums with only one skill while the rest have already 5 skills. That one crew member can also be designated towards 3 different tech tree vehicles, of course still the same tank type, and the various builds you can make with the skill/perk tree. However, there will be some worries alongside, like the instructors, which can give insanely good boosts. I hope they will balance that well enough. Also the unique crews that will become instructors instead of commanders, and that would mean that all the unique voice lines will be gone. And finally, will the conversion rate be good enough and not like Equipment 2.0 with only 30 free demount kits, or in this case 30 levels that you have to divide towards all your different commanders. Okay, that seems a little bit too ridiculous, but really I do not want to see that bad of a conversion rate once again. Battle Pass changes. Now there are going to be 3 tanks inside the Battle Pass, and if you remember that scene from the well-deserved rewards vehicle, I think it's probably going to be a medium, a heavy and a tank destroyer. There will be some new options at certain stages. They also have progressive styles, which means you can get a style itself earlier, but the more you play, the more 3D additions will be added, which is kind of interesting. I'm also wondering if you can separate those 3D additions individually. If you have them all, you can maybe remove one of them, of one particular 3D addition that you don't not like that much. So you will have different looks between players with the same style. And you can also earn points with ranked battles this time. So this seems like a lot of nice extra additions, but I still don't agree with the option to buy all of the level, which contains extra bounty equipment, which is still pay to win. Maps training. Practice mode for all the maps. It's pretty much like a training room, but with more options for players to learn maps. And that sounds really great. I hope that there are also implements for bots within it. I was thinking about such a mod which contains bots which you can set in particular map inside a training mode, and why that doesn't exist yet. I'm really curious how this one will develop. Italian heavies. So we saw them already and the Bisonte is already here. My impression so far is that, well, I hope they pan out just like the double barrel tanks previous year, with a neat new mechanic but not overpowered. And looking at the specific stats of the Bisonte and speculating the others would be similar, I don't see that this tech tree will be quite broken, thank God. New Czechian heavy tanks. So I saw the first iteration of a tier 7 Czech premium heavy tank, and it was absolutely garbage with pretty much the worst DPM of its tier. All other characteristics are also quite bad, so I hope they will balance that well enough. But they were also talking about a cyclic gun, which isn't an autoloader, but a normal single shot. I don't know why they are specifying cyclic, because cyclic means the amount of rounds you can fire at a certain time, because just like rounds per minute. However, if you look a bit more into the meaning of cyclic, it means the mechanical rate of fire or the maximum rate of fire given only mechanical function. So that excludes reload or any other circumstances that will stop the firing. But that hasn't really a connection to the gun itself, only the rate of fire, which already exists in a game. However, with that information, I can speculate that this type of cyclic gun can have a boost modus which will increase the DPM maybe towards optimal cyclic values. This might mean that these tanks can have something similar what certain French ships has as consumables inside World of Warships. With this consumable, their reload was reduced in half, giving it an insane DPM boost. This might be the case why the tier 7 is so bad, with such an atrociously bad DPM. There might be this boost modus implemented that can be activated for a short time that increases the DPM a lot, maybe even double it up, creating a DPM that is slightly better than the tank with the best DPM at tier 7. Well, if they want to do that, they really have to up their balancing efforts towards a whole new level. New maps. So the port map will make a return. Also, we saw other maps already being highlighted in the super test, like Island and Graf Zeppelin. All kinds of new maps look interesting, and I really just hope that they are balanced. Balanced like Pearl River, something similar like Berlin, but without those negative side effects at the north. And absolutely not something that remotely looks like highway events. So the last Waffle event will return with improvements. So this is very nice. It was a really fun game mode, but I hope that the difference between a bad player playing the Waffenträger and a good player playing the Waffenträger is reduced, because it was quite obvious that the Waffenträger was nearly unstoppable with a good player at hand and easy as hell to defeat with a bad player. Steel Hunter comes earlier 2021 with small changes. Well, I'm not bored of it yet, so let's come. Frontline will be later in 2021. No info about changes. Well, it seems like they pretty much switch up the periods of those two game modes, although I would like it more if they do the game modes back to back instead of being cut in half each quarter throughout the year, being Steel Hunter to Frontline, Steel Hunter, Frontline. Mix it up a little bit more. But well, I like it because I like Frontline less than Steel Hunter, so that game mode can wait a little bit longer. Halloween event will return in 2021. I really hope they give another story connected to Murney 13, expecting the TCU, the Tank Connected Universe. Team Clash 2021 with looks like 8 teams in total this time, including the likes of the Killzor and Circumflexes. So I am definitely going to support my fellow Dutch cheesehead Circumflexes. New platoons, so a new search system for platoons you can do while entering the queue. I think that it would work something like finding a legionnaire for strongholds. Like you might pick tank types which you want to include in your platoon if you want to be the platoon commander. And vice versa, if you are a normal platoon member, just hit that button with the option to get yourself into a platoon commander's team. Platoon, team of 3, I don't know. And you will also see the tanks of your platoon members in your carriage. Bit a Fortnite feeling format, something like that, in which you can see the characters your teammates are playing in full 3D instead of right now how it is in World of Tanks, pretty much a little post-it card inside the platoon tab. And finally, extra new tanks. This year there are going to be tanks implemented to 2 nations. Even though there isn't much information given, they can be speculations with the new tanks next to the Czech heavies, because secure sources within Wargaming said that they have a new branch of wheeled vehicles and one of a Vickers / Chieftain heavies. Also Swiss tanks will be introduced, but that will be a year later in 2022. So I'm really curious about the new wheeled tank branch. Might also be from the UK, but they said they won't be introduced because of the bad feedback from players. Wait, what? They are actually listening to feedback? Wargaming listening to feedback? What? So further along there are some extra points what they, as well, small changes they want to implement or things they do not want to change. Then how is my life going to look like in 2021? So I'm going to get a mentality of, well, life goes on as it does. No major plans so far in 2021. I don't still want to keep that neutral day-to-day mentality, not planning too far ahead, because previous year I thought I would get a job earlier in that year, but instead it was half a year later. Still within that year, but well, it shows that I cannot predict even what would happen for quite regular plans, like getting a full-time job within a year. So I have also no major plans further on alongside. I feel quite comfortable at my new job, but while I have to work at home for at least a few weeks this month, I'm curious if that works out, but I don't see big things happening for me personally this year. I will see if something big happens, but right now I don't have something really in mind to, well, achieve, to set as a goal. Well, maybe promotion would be nice, but within a year of working somewhere, I doubt that. And also moving out of my parents' house, the problem is I still don't have the mindset to do that, not enough independent mindset. Even when the housing market eventually crashes down to cheap prices to invest in, I'm only going to do it when I feel like I'm ready to do it, which, well, isn't right now. And YouTube 2021, how is this channel going to look like this year? Well, a lot is going to change actually on my channel, because I already spent a lot of time towards my job and I don't want YouTube to become more of a chore within weekly deadlines. I also have less intention to record more, so I think I will not only reduce the videos from 2 uploads a week to 1 upload a week, but I really do not specify a certain planning each week and just make them when I want to, or when it takes more time it gets uploaded later instead on precise times in a week. So having said that, I do have some new ideas in the making, which you will hear more about in the upcoming lookbacks videos on events and game modes. I also want to revision some of my series, like the good game replays. They are good, but most of the times they boil down to a select amount of great choices or decisions or tricks, leaving most of the replay pretty much empty with, well, standard commentary like, oh, good shot, I did a good shot right there, or a little bit overextended there, and well, you get the point. I really want to let the focus be on skillful plays that you don't see often in your more standard replay commentaries. So for the future of the WoT GG episodes, I will compile several of them within one video, only featuring the most important aspects or lessons you can learn from. I'm quite happy how strong Stronghold's format is as it is right now, being more commentary but with more fast-paced games. And NBTT replay will also stay the same as the only format with the more standard replay commentary, but really getting focused on what the NBTT member did so well in those games, or even some elements they can improve at in those games. So the Dutch highlight series will be last, how it already is for the past few months. I have a few ideas how I want to do those this year. I want to try to record one every month or so, and trying to edit and publish it within a month as well, so there isn't that half a year gap anymore. That, or start streaming so now and then when I feel like it. But I really want to finish that up with like episode 100, so that makes 11 more episodes to go. So I will try to conclude that at the end of 2021. So I pretty much have talked for an entire hour up to now. I hope I can reduce it in the video to half an hour, 45 minutes, hopefully, I don't know. But thank you all for watching this video. Thank you all for following me, maybe watching only one video or multiple of all of them this year. It has been great seeing those views, although there are still not many of them, by far not many. It's always great to see some interest in my hobby, which I will hopefully still enjoy for the upcoming next years. And with that, I will see you next time. Laters.